Here we go. A national digital ID for Canadians and implanted microchips for the Swedes. Klaus Schwab pushes for transhumanism, and the World Economic Forum predicts the end of free will and the creation of new life forms as science replaces God. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine, and everybody says he's a madman. But mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the maddest of them all?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michael Matt, and this is the Remnant Underground. What's the game plan for tonight's program? I hesitated even coming out here to address the situation in the Ukraine with Russia because I know that nerves are raw and emotions are running high, and this could easily blow people apart. And that's the main reason I'm here to talk to them. I'm not an expert on the Ukraine, so I don't want to pretend to be one. But I want to try to hold us together because I see a lot of people already at each other's throats, and I don't want that to happen. That happened once before. This is like, for us, deja vu. Back in 2003, in the pages of the Remnant, we just didn't go along with the invasion of Iraq. When Bush and Cheney were out there, telling us that those people hated us and we needed to hate them. And I remember pushing back hard, and we lost pretty much everybody at the time. We lost a lot of subscribers. We had the strangest bedfellows, antiwar.com or Noam Chomsky, people like that. And for the most part, the conservatives were all into beating the war drums, which were based on a patriotic feeling. We had just come off 9/11. So again, there were a lot of raw emotions. People were upset. And let's face it, we've lived through something similar now. We just got through 2 years of lockdown. We just got through the COVID thing, The situation up in Canada has been disheartening, and all of a sudden Europe is falling into war, And I would encourage you, please, to take me at my word when I say I'm not trying to dictate to you. I'm not trying to be Mr. Expert here. I just want to hold us together. That's the one thing I think that we can do, is hold us together, hold the clans together right now. And I'm gonna talk about what I think, my feelings here, as my opinions. They are not going to be popular, and just something about me. I'm stubborn, I guess. When I'm told by the media folks and the folks in the White House, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, who I'm supposed to hate, who I'm supposed to be angry, who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, I just instinctively push against that. I apologize. I hope maybe that's why you're watching this show, because you know that that's the way I am. So we're going to get to that in a moment. And I also want to preface everything I'm saying tonight, and we'll get to that in a few moments too. We start with prayer, and our hearts go out, our prayers go out for the folks who are suffering the most on the ground, a lot of innocent people in the Ukraine. I'll talk about that in a moment too. First, I want to sort of set things up by doing a follow-up that maybe sets some of the context for why I'm so suspicious of what's happening on the TV right now. I'm going to start that context by going back up to north of the border here, up in Canada, Justin Trudeau's land of unicorns and rainbows up in Canada. Now, just before the horses began trampling the sovereign citizens of Canada, Justin Trudeau declared a state of emergency. You all remember that. Emergency powers for Justin, so that he could freeze the bank accounts of any Canadian who happened to stumble on those unacceptable views that he made so famous. Now, a few days later, the benevolent Prime Minister of Canada took to the airwaves and began lecturing Vladimir Putin about how a free and democratic leader should behave.
I think Vladimir Putin has come to believe that he can lie with impunity, that he can violate international law with impunity.
Now that just doesn't sit well with me, having lived very close to the people of Canada who are suffering unbelievable. Let's not forget the suffering that we've all been through. We're seeing the Ukrainian folks suffering right now in a different way. But what we've gone through with the prospect now of our children being vaccinated at 3, 4, 5 years old, the entire population of the world is going through a lockdown and going through torment and psychological warfare. It's not a small thing for any of us. And to have seen what the Canadian folks were going through, which was worse than we were going through, and then listening to Justin Trudeau suddenly mount up on his high horse and start lecturing somebody in Eastern Europe and Russia. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Now, back to that story. Justin's state of emergency was unexpectedly canceled. Did you notice that? Everybody said that state of emergency is going to be there for a long time. Man, he's going to leave that there forever. Boom, it got canceled 2 days later. Why? I believe it's because Justin had jumped the shark. Because it just so happens that the World Economic Forum, that's Klaus Schwab's organization, is helping Canada establish a national and very controversial digital ID system right now.
Canada is on the cusp of a revolutionary innovation that will transform the way Canadians authenticate themselves online and protect their identity. Digital ID. Digital ID is a way for Canadians to identify themselves to government, businesses, and each other electronically. It would have the power and security to store every Canadian's electronic identity and attributes. Canada's banks are perfectly situated to help lead the creation of a federated digital ID system between government and the private sector. The World Economic Forum agrees that banks and financial institutions should lead the path forward for digital ID.
I know. The truckers had so ticked off the little ferret up in Canada that he kind of used his ring, to borrow from J.R.R. Tolkien. He used the ring to his own benefit and prematurely. He froze the bank accounts. Kind of rushed to do that, didn't he? Froze the bank accounts, thus publicly making the case now for all of the critics up in Canada of this new digital ID system. That's why I say he jumped the shark. And then in so doing, Trudeau shows the whole world exactly how easy it will be, friends, to cancel every one of us, anyone who disagrees and goes against the government. You see? You will be digitally banished. You will cease to exist. You will lose your rights as a citizen. You won't even be allowed to buy food. Justin put that on display, I think, prematurely. And that's why they pulled the emergency powers back so quickly, because you know what? There was outrage over that, and Justin probably, maybe, got himself a phone call from Field Marshal Schwab. Initiate Operation Pivot to Putin, right? Change the narrative, change the story. And this ironic hypocrisy, friends, was not missed. It wasn't missed by some pretty powerful people, including now, right down the street, the next province over or so, the Premier of Alberta, Canada.
And so, no, I'm not going to be taking any policy direction from Klaus Schwab or his ilk. And what I find offensive, look, the so-called Great Reset is not a conspiracy theory. It is an actual set of concrete proposals being advocated by some very influential people, and including apparently by Prime Minister Trudeau, who clearly alluded to it, referred to it, quoted from it, the Schwab theory, in a speech he gave to the United Nations a couple of months ago. So it's not a conspiracy theory to talk about that. Those are the folks advocating it. And I think it's perfectly legitimate for democratically elected leaders, for me to say, heck no, we're not going to exploit or take advantage of a crisis to advance a political agenda.
Now, as I say, resistance is not futile. That's a premier up in Canada. Sounds like he's on our show, doesn't it? People are waking up. I like to take a little credit for that, maybe a tiny bit of credit for that, since we have our video from a year and a half ago has 20 million views on Davos and woke a lot of people up. Whatever. Thank God. All honor and praise and glory to God if people are waking up, and I believe they are. So now, in the present crisis that we're in, Vladimir Putin is going rogue in Eastern Europe. And you got to wonder what he thinks of this insane Great Reset that the premiers of Canada now, and people in Europe, parliamentarians in Europe even, are excoriating. It seems like he's moving away from it. Because remember, Vladimir Putin knows all about it. Before I say anything more about Putin, I am not a Putin apologist. I'm not an expert. I'm simply trying to get to the truth of what's going on here. I typically don't take my truth from the folks on CNN, and for that matter, for the folks on Fox News. So, back before COVID landed and everyone had not even yet heard of the Great Reset, the Field Marshal, Klaus Schwab, was bragging about how Putin had been one of his boys. Just as Justin Trudeau was one of his boys, according to Klaus, so was Vladimir Putin. So says Klaus. Here's Klaus.
I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on. They all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But
that's pretty upsetting, isn't it? Although you do see in Klaus's face, that old guy, he was at my World Economic Forum, everybody was here at my party. You kind of see that weird bragging thing that he's kind of a dead giveaway.
But
so it's hard to say if it's true or not. It could be, though. It could be, right? The math isn't quite lining up because the Global Young Leaders Program began in 1993, and it was only for those who are under the year of 39 years of age. So Putin would have been, at that point, too old. But that was also long before Klaus Schwab had become, let's face it, a meme, a joke, punchline, right? Lots of people have moved away from that character over the past couple of years. He's very clumsy. He brags way too much. Not a stupid man, but he's too eager to brag about what he is accomplishing. He's turned into that Bond villain that we introduced a couple of years ago on this show. So these days now, things are changing. China is not going to go along with the Great Reset unless the world is going to be reset in the image and likeness of China. Everybody knows this. The U.S. has been under a very bizarre form of attack, as we've all been living through, with our country pretty much being run now from Happy Acres, from the Joe Biden rest home. You know, he's out of it. He's not going to be a player. And so you got Putin sitting there going, I wonder if maybe I should take matters into my own hands here when it comes to Mother Russia. This isn't going too well. And this is what we've been saying all along. This isn't going well at all. The COVID thing did not, as bad as it did not take out enough people. It wasn't deadly enough to reset the world as they had planned. So everybody's regrouping right now. Everybody, even Bill Gates, is regrouping right now. And Putin, let's face it, he's a lot like Trump. We gotta learn to use what we know about human nature and personalities, not just go by what people say and what's likely and what fits well. What can we tell about the personality of a guy like Vladimir Putin? I mean, he's pretty transparent, just like Donald Trump was and is. You know, for Vladimir Putin, his country comes first. He's a very arrogant guy. He's a smart guy, proud Russian. And he's on a mission right now to do what? To make Russia great again. That's obvious. And unlike the helmet-wearing morons on Fox News and CNN, Putin knows his history, especially the history of Russia, especially the history of Europe. And let's face it, if you're listening right now to one of these guys wearing the helmets on Fox, well, the chances are pretty good that you're thrice vaxxed and you're just out there looking for a booster, you know? So you're doing exactly, in other words, what you're told. And I know most people in this audience are not doing exactly what they tell you to do on TV. Thanks be to God. That's why we can have these conversations. So whatever we think of Putin and what he's doing right now, I'm not apologizing for it. I'm trying to find out, trying to see if we can find out what's really going on. Because we know what they want us to accept, but you know better than to go along with that. So we're going to dig a little deeper. And what I don't see at the moment, and if you do, please leave it in the comment. I hope in the thread. I hope we can have a good discussion. What I don't see is how Vladimir Putin fits into the George Soros, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates vision of a world without borders. I just don't see it. It's not to say that, Russia is just so perfect and imperialistic. They've never had any globalist designs. Everybody's had the conversation about globalism. It's hard to be a world leader right now without in some way being entangled with the globalists, right? But as that narrative begins to fall apart or at least stumble, lots of people are moving away from it too. How is Vladimir Putin's attempt to shore up the borders of old Mother Russia, how does that fit into a world without borders? It doesn't. So what's going on here? The only thing that Putin seems to be doing right now, the only thing he seems to be building back better, shall we say, at the moment, are the borders of Mother Russia, the Russian Empire. That doesn't fit in to the New World Order, friends. It just doesn't. Now, it could be that in our world, which has gone insane, it does, because we keep hearing that Putin is a madman. Maybe he is. Maybe he is. But it does also make sense that it would seem like madness to our emasculated woke culture to do what every strong national leader in history has done, from Charlemagne to Churchill to Queen Elizabeth to Eisenhower, Napoleon. Name your favorite powerful, famous world leader in history. What do? They made their own country great again. They put their own country first. they strengthened their own nation. You see, this whole idea of the brotherhood of man, and we're all going to get along, and liberty and equity and equality and fraternity and all of these things, this hasn't worked anywhere in the world since the Enlightenment imploded, right? Since it landed, really hasn't worked. These are pie-in-the-sky ideas. And when the rubber hits the road, it seems like the nation state kicks back into everybody's intellect, everybody's thought pattern, right? My country, which is the only thing, by the way. Country, the nation state, the only thing that people, normal people like us, will actually fight for. Have you noticed this? Anybody going to die for the European Union? So we keep hearing about the Ukrainians. Well, the Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom. Newsflash, fighting for your freedom is anti-globalist. Them's fighting words. That's hate speech, right? So everybody's praising the Ukrainians for doing what the Ukrainians should do and anybody else should do who actually has a homeland. Fight for it. But you see, we're not supposed to do that anymore. Joe Biden doesn't believe in that. The southern border of our own country is gone. You don't fight for America anymore. You don't fight for anything. Anything except your porn and your video games and your fast food, right? Ukrainians, they're fighting right now. Are they fighting for globalism? Are you out of your mind? Of course not. You're not fighting for globalism. They're right there in the streets, so we're told, with Molotov cocktails and squirrel guns, squirrel rifles, shooting and fighting for their country, for nationalism, for populism, for the nation state, for borders, their own borders. The very thing the world is going to be better off with when we get rid of them all. Remember? The very things that the globalists condemn on a daily basis. The end of the borders and the nation states. Just a few weeks ago, if you fought for your nation, if you believed in your nationality, you were Adolf Hitler, man. You were Nazi, you were fascist. If you believe in your country, especially if you thought your country might be better than somebody else's country, which is how it's always worked, pride in your nation. Ukrainians are out there defending against, right now, a powerful nation state that doesn't seem to share this vision of the New World Order anymore, does it? In fact, it's all in, Russia is, on reestablishing what to me looks a lot like the old world order of Mother Russia. What is going on here, friends? What is really going on here? I'll be the first to admit that this is an extremely complex issue, extremely complex, one that should not blow us apart. I don't know much more about the intricacies of this whole political situation more than you do. We don't need to fight about it, but we sure as heck need to talk about it, and we sure as heck need to pray about it, because it's extremely serious what's happening right now. They tried to blow up the world with their epidemic, the pandemic. Now they're going to literally, I guess, start trying to tip off wars, bombs, missiles, tanks to blow up what's left of the world right now. This is very serious. And regardless of how corrupt now, we've all heard about how corrupt this Obama-backed, Hillary Clinton-backed Ukrainian government is. We've all lived under corrupt governments. We still love our country. We live under an extremely corrupt government right now, but we still love our country. So there are Ukrainian people over there right now who our hearts go out to because they love their country too, despite what many are calling a coup in 2014 to establish a U.S. pro-NATO, anti-Russian government.
Well, it is a great pleasure to welcome President Poroshenko to the Oval Office. He and I have been working together a lot over the last several months. The people of Ukraine have declared their desire for a sovereign, independent, economic and foreign policy that promises them freedom and prosperity and self-determination. And President Poroshenko's election, I think, represented those aspirations of the Ukrainian people. I am very proud that the United States has led the international community and our European partners in making sure that there is a cost to Russia for its aggression in Ukraine.
There are thugs in the Ukraine, just as there are good people in the Ukraine, just like anywhere else. Yeah, there are thugs, but there are lots of good people. And I'm certainly not minimizing the plight of the good people in the Ukraine who tonight are scared to death, who are hearing bombs and guns and tanks going off all around them. They got little kids just like I do. It's not difficult to empathize for them and with them and to pray for them. In fact, for me, it's kind of personal in a way. Because when we were in my family, when we were thrown out of our parish back in the 1980s, it was the Ukrainian Catholics who took us in. I have a strong love and bond with them. I went to Mass with the Ukrainians every single Sunday for 10 years. I even learned to sing their songs, believe it or not. Sviati Boże, Sviati Kripki, Sviati Besmetni, Pomilnu nas. We even shared their heroes, like the great Cardinal Joseph Schlippy, Major Archbishop of the Ukrainians, who spent 18 years in a Soviet prison camp. I wept at their stories, at their accounts of their own mothers and fathers starved to death by Joseph Stalin in the 1930s. So yeah, Christos Voskres, my Ukrainian brothers and sisters. But please understand that the builders of this new world order today are even worse than what your fathers and mothers went through under Stalin. Even worse.
Aujourd'hui, au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans nos topos. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
Crazy talk? Is that the stuff of science fiction? Alas, it's not. It's already happening. It's already here. In Sweden, they're lining up for it.
I think it's very much part of my own integrity to have myself chipped and keep my personal data there with me. I actually feel in a way that it's even more controlled on my end, having it in my own hand.
So I have a chip implant in my arm, and I have programmed the chip so that I have my COVID passport and on the chip. And the reason is that I always want to have it accessible. And when I read my chip, I just swipe my phone on the chip and then I unlock and it opens up. This is a PDF, which is my COVID passport. And this means that it's always accessible for me or for anyone else really who wants to read me.
Now this, my friends, this is the Great Reset. This is what it looks like. This is the fourth industrial revolution. We might call it the fourth industrial Orwellian revolution, right? They are absolutely dead serious about this, as well as transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and now intelligent design. Yes, it's back, only not the Ben Stein version.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens, because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design.
I don't know how to say this any more directly, any more clearly. I don't know how to put it, friends. They are literally replacing God. Literally. At least in their own minds. And guess what? We are to be their creatures, to be regulated, to be controlled, to be hacked.
Why is data so important? It's important because we've reached the point when we can hack not just computers, we can hack human beings and other organisms. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself.
As they used to say on TV, but wait, there's more. In their future, friends, in their future as they see it, Klaus Schwab, who's got the blessing of Pope Francis. Francis sends visitors over to the World Economic Forum every year, cardinals, high-ranking cardinals, to be with the folks at Davos. And in their future, you're going to own nothing. You've heard that. You will own nothing and you'll be happy, but it gets more. But there's more. you will not own your own thoughts. You will not have free will anymore.
Humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. Free will, that's over.
You say, oh man, that's crazy. Is it? Is it crazy? Do you think 2 years ago, if somebody told you they were going to mask up the entire world and try to vaccinate 7 billion people, that might have sounded crazy too, huh? And all of this, by the way, everything I just showed you, this is all in cooperation with the folks right now who are beating the war drums, okay? That's kind of where I want to bring the context back into. You know, this is all in cooperation with Team Biden, Team Trudeau, Team Macron, Team Schwab, even Team Francis. They're all in on this. And they're all sure of one thing, that we all need to see, not them, not what you just saw on the clips. None of that's a problem. Your enemy is Russia. It might be. Russia might be part of the problem. But do you really, when you look at that, do you really see Russia as a thing that keeps you up late worrying about your children tonight? What they're saying basically is, hey, you know what? Forget about rising gas prices. Forget about those empty food shelves. Forget about your vaxxed 3-year-olds and millions of vaxxed 3-year-olds all over the world now. Forget about radical abortion expansion laws. Forget about all of that. That's not important. What's important is Russia. Forget everything else. You got one enemy now. We didn't do anything wrong. We were with you the whole time. We're the paragons of virtue and democracy and human rights and equity. You know what's going on here? This has nothing to do with minimizing the plight of the Ukrainians. Once again, these animals are exploiting the people on the ground in the Ukraine for the visual, for the drama, you see? For the optics of the next thing that they're going to do. Joe Biden, he tells us that Vlad Putin, he's the embodiment of all evil. And we're like, yeah, man, he must be. Even though Joe Biden is the one who's guaranteeing abortion as a fundamental human right to every person in the world, I mean, in our country and throughout the whole world eventually. At the same time, the homophobic Russia is enacting laws against abortion, friends. If you weren't aware of this, this is the reality right now. 100 years after the Russian Soviet Republic, under another Vladimir, Lenin, became the first country in the modern era to allow abortion in all circumstances. 100 years after that, suddenly Russia seems to be checking it a little bit and going, wait a minute. Life without God, life without morality, and in this Western culture, in this pro-abortion, pro-gay marriage world, it's not working out too well. So Russia, the evil empire, bans gay pride parades, for example, while Vice President Kamala Harris participates in them.
My pronouns are she and her.
And some folks come back and they go, yeah, but Putin's actually lamenting the breakup of the Soviet Union, But that's not the same as saying he's lamenting the end of the evil empire, and the end of communism, the end of the errors of Russia.
Еще один серьезный вызов российской идентичности связан с событиями, которые происходят в мире. Здесь есть и внешнеполитические, и моральные аспекты. Мы видим, как многие евроатлантические страны фактически пошли по пути отказа от своих корней, в том числе и от христианских ценностей, составляющих основу западной цивилизации.
According to what he says, he's learned the lessons of the historical lessons of his own country. He's seen where atheism has led Russia, and he doesn't want any part of it. That's what he's saying right now. Don't take my word for it.
Большевики после революции 1917 года, опираясь на догмы марксизма Маркса и Энгельса, тоже объявили, что изменят весь привычный уклад. Не только политический и экономический, но и само представление о том, что такое человеческая мораль, основы здорового существования общества. Разрушение вековых ценностей, веры, отношений между людьми вплоть до полного отказа от семьи, такое было. насаждение и поощрение в западных странах уверен, что агрессивное вымарывание целых страниц собственной истории, обратная дискриминация большинства в интересах меньшинств или требование отказаться от привычного понимания таких базовых вещей, как мама, папа, семья или даже различия полов, это, по их мнению, и есть вехи движения к общественному обновлению.
And while our young men compete against girls because they now are being told by our system that they can be girls if they want, they can compete against them in sports, while we're teaching our children critical race theory and tearing down our statues and defunding our police, Vladimir Putin is saying that's national suicide, and he's pushing back against it.
Не говорю уже о просто чудовищных вещах, когда детям сегодня с малолетства внушают, что мальчик легко может стать девочкой, и наоборот. Фактически навязывают им якобы имеющийся у каждого выбор. Навязывают, отстраняют этого родителей, заставляя ребенка принимать решения, способные сломать ему жизнь. Тех же, кто рискует сказать, что мужчины и женщины все-таки есть, и это биологический факт, подвергает чуть ли не остракизму. Родитель номер 1 и родитель номер 2. Родившие родители вместо мама. Запрет на использование словосочетания «грудное молоко» и замена его человеческим молоком, чтобы люди, не уверенные в собственной половой принадлежности, не расстроились. Повторю, и это не ново. В 20-е годы советские культуртрегеры, так называемые, изобрели тоже так называемый новояз, полагая, что таким образом они созидают.
I repeat, I'm not an apologist for Putin, but you're not going to see any of this on TV. They want to dehumanize this man for sure. And what's happening in the Ukraine right now with the missiles, it's difficult to watch, so I get that. But they don't want to hear anything that possibly gives another reason for why he's doing what he's doing. And maybe what he's doing absolutely cannot be justified. I'm wide open to that. But we are not seeing anything but the madman, the Adolf Hitler, the Stalin, the Saddam Hussein, once again, right now on the evening TV. Why is that? Because I want to know what's going on. And I assume you do too. You know, reports have it now that there are dozens of Tony Fauci-style biolabs financed by the United States all over the Ukraine right now. Is this true? Putin says it is true. He also says that the Obama, Clinton, Biden meddling in the Ukraine is an attack on Russia's sovereignty because they're basically setting up a missile pad launching area right in his backyard. Now, we can agree or disagree with that. We can say that's wrong, it's misplaced, you're a madman, don't do that. But it is important to realize that that's what he's saying that he's doing. Because it sounds an awful lot like, to me, like what JFK was doing with the Bay of Pigs a long time, 50 years ago, that fiasco. He saw that as an attack on U.S. sovereignty in his own backyard. Was JFK a madman too? Maybe. But the similarities are pretty obvious. When Bush and Cheney shocked and awed Baghdad to death 20 years ago, because those madmen, you remember what they said at the time? They don't like our freedom and our democracy. They don't like our freedom and our democracy. So they blew the hell out of a sovereign country looking for weapons of mass destruction that they never found. You see? But that was okay. Because whenever the globalist elites bomb the hell out of a sovereign country, well, they're doing God's holy will. And whenever someone else tries to do the same thing, well, you know what they are? They're pawns of Satan. What is this? How do we know the difference? Well, we trust the elites, even when we don't.
At Davos a few years ago, the Edelman survey showed us that the good news is the elite across the world trust each other more and more. The bad news is that in every single country they were polling, the majority of people trusted that elite less.
And now those same elites are outraged because Putin is undermining the sacred will of the people in a sovereign state. If it weren't so tragic, it would be funny. Because what about our sacred will? We the people in this country. It meant nothing to them when they locked us all down, when they locked down our entire sovereign state. Do you remember? When they told us all to stay in our houses, and we needed to lose our jobs, and we needed to inject our kids, and we need to, shut down completely even our churches, stay out of our churches. They told us we couldn't go see God in our sovereign state. And now they want to put chips in our hands, in our arms. They want to connect our brains to their computers. And tell me again, who are the bad guys here? Because I'm losing track. I am really losing track. Pray for the Ukrainians? Yes. This doesn't have anything to do with the folks on the ground, friends. There's always that sort of collateral damage and exploitation when it comes to globalist meddling in the lives of sovereign states. Many of those people are just the collateral damage that you're seeing on TV every night. And it's terrifying over there. Yes, I get it. And the pro-abort, pro-gay marriage, anti-country, anti-God bastards on the white horses, they're sitting out there in boozy hazes, politicizing the entire bloody thing. Speaking of boozy hazes, here's Nancy Pelosi.
Well, if you look at the map and you see Hungary, and you see how it is encircled, Russia, Belarus, Crimea.
No, I can't. I just can't, friends. This is Nancy Pelosi. This is CNN. This is Joe Biden, right? Telling us how we're supposed to react to this. And what we're looking at, whether it's in the Ukraine or here in the States with our own wide open border or in Europe, what we're looking at is the suicide of the West, friends. God has been banished, and this type of chaos is what happens. And when our transportation and energy capabilities collapse now in a few years beneath the weight of the Green New Deal and the Build Back Better plan, guess who suffers? Our children. They're the ones that are going to pay the price in this, this futuristic world. It's like something right out of a Mad Max movie. That's what they're creating right now, So Russia might well be a problem, but look out for the demonic pipers who are trying to lead the children of this world straight into hell, friends. Straight into hell. That's what they're doing. Stay focused. Stay united. Black is white now, and white is black. And nothing, but nothing, is as it seems. Pray your rosary every day. Keep your head down. And pray that God continues to confuse now the tongues of these builders of this new global Tower of Babel before it's too late. I hope and I pray that at the end of this show, we've managed to at least keep ourselves together in a world that quite literally is blowing itself apart. God bless you, friends. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Michael Matt for Remnant TV, and if we're all still here, I'll see you next week. God bless.